And welcome, everybody. My name is Michael Rayford. This is Word for Word, and I am very excited today because I've been missing for a while, but I'm finally back and um, interviewing some people and talking about some very interesting topics. And for those of you who know me, I've been on a financial campaign for several years now, and trying to help the community eradicate financial illiteracy. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And my first guest today, actually my only guest today, because she doesn't need anybody else in this space. Um, One of my colleagues, one of my partners, Miss Shante Moore. Welcome to the show, Shante.
Thank you, Michael. I'm so excited we finally got a chance to link up and have this conversation that we're going to have today.
Good stuff. And so, how are you doing? We haven't seen each other in a while because of the pandemic, of course, but we see each other via Zoom. Typically every week. But how are you doing? I know you just had a major accomplishment a few months ago, and I see you have it right there by your name. You have a couple of different credentials there. Why don't you just talk about those real quick for us?
Yeah, no, I've been great. Even in the time of the pandemic, one thing I've been intentional about is trying to stay connected with folks and, whether that's over Zoom, virtual meetings, I send out a lot of email communications just to let people know, like, hey, I'm still here, still doing what I'm doing, and I still have resources to share. So for my credentials, I'm a certified financial educator, through the Heartland Institute of Financial Education, the national nonprofit that we both are associated with. I've had that certification for almost 5 years now, where I was certified to go and teach adult learners about, different topics of financial literacy, which is unique, because adults, by the time they become adults, they've already learned about money through trial and error. And so when I'm coming in, now I'm trying to teach them a different way to think about money. So there's certain techniques for that. I'm also an investment advisor representative of fiduciary, which basically means I hold very special licenses that allow me to have that provide investment advice and have conversations about investing. And then last year, in the middle of the pandemic, I finally completed my master's of business administration, which was a huge accomplishment because it was so funny. I had started it over 10 years ago when I was younger, before I even got into this, really got into this industry, before I had the majority of my children. And, life was different, and I don't know why I stopped back then. So right, it was actually January of 2020. I signed up to finish my MBA. Of course, not knowing the pandemic was about to hit us, but I stuck through it. I stayed. I just was like, you know what? We're home now. Let me just really bunker down and get it done. There's no excuse to, I could have made an excuse to not finish it, but I did, and super excited just to be able to add that additional, credibility to my resume. So yeah, things have been going so far. So far, so great in 2022 as well.
Well, congratulations on those accomplishments. Pretty awesome. And, I wanted to have this conversation with you today because, of course, it is Black History Month. And, I have a friend who is an entrepreneur, a barber, he's in media. And one of the things he posted a couple of days ago is that, I'm Black every day.
Right.
So, it's not even about the month, but this is our lifestyle. This is who we are. And so we should celebrate it every day. But with that, I've seen a lot of things on the news, and even myself, since getting into this campaign and teaching people how money works, I've watched financial news a lot more because the more I learn, the more now I pay attention to, right?
Right.
And so one of the biggest topics right now is, and it pains me, it saddens me to say that, Black Americans are way behind when it comes to financial literacy. So we're trying to stop or eradicate financial illiteracy by teaching, concepts, information, strategies, those type of things. What are your thoughts on kind of where we are as a community?
Yeah. So for many folks who don't know, I'm actually Black and Native American Indian. And
You got some Indian in your family, girl?
it's real. I'm a member. I'm an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation, which is probably the largest federally recognized American Indian tribe in the country. And my father is Black, and I've always had that duality, that different perspective. But I never looked at myself as like, oh, 50-50, I'm half Black or half Native. No, I'm 100% black. I'm a black woman, and I'm also an indigenous woman. And so, coming from representing, those two most underrepresented communities when it comes to having financial resources, it's near and dear to my heart, because both of those communities they have no support. We often are left to fend for ourselves. We have no type of wealth building financial education at all because, when you think about families or people who have money in general, they come from families and backgrounds who had money. Our communities, our especially black communities, we have such a traumatic history that was intentionally created to separate us. The capitalism, the riches of America were built on the backs of black communities and black families, and it's not even acknowledged in that manner. So it's just a really hard conversation to have because there's so much historical trauma tied to that as well. It's not like, oh, let me make money, because we see a lot of black folks, a lot of black people who become successful. They make good money and they become really successful business owners, and they still have poor money habits. And
Yep,
there's a reason for that, and that's obviously why we do what we do. But I think it's just, I'm happy that we're in a position that we can take our knowledge and share it, um, because folks, they don't know what they don't know. And what I do see though is that a lot of black communities, they want to do better. They want to change that generational curse of not having any money. And I think that's something where we can really continue to help with our efforts.
absolutely. And so, with what we do, um, so one of the ways that we educate people is we have a book called "How Money Works: Stop Being a Sucker," and so of course we donate that book, we give that book, we share that book with people to help educate them because the education is, of course, the very first step. But then we also have different classes. So we have our master classes, which is like an intense, like a 2 hour class that can be repeated several times. We have our elements classes, which are broken down bite sized pieces, which are about a half an hour long. But then we have, I mean, especially for this topic, we have a class called Black America and Financial Literacy. So I
Mm-hmm.
want to pull that up, and we're going to talk about some of the information that's on this presentation or this class,
Yeah,
and that's really going to drive the conversation that we're going to have.
yeah.
So, and let me go back a little bit because I don't want to spoil. So, in this particular class, there is the TIAA Institute, which is, of course, a bunch of smart people got together
Mm-hmm.
and ask a lot of questions within a survey to really find out where we stand with financial literacy. But of course, their thought process was financial literacy, wellness, and resilience among African Americans. So they're talking about us and where we are. But one of the big things with Black History Month is that we lag behind every other population as a whole in this country. And so the only way to really bridge that gap is to become financially illiterate. I'm sorry, financially literate, understand how money works, but then take action. Because one of the things that we definitely find in this campaign is that we can teach people these concepts and information, but people don't take action. And so, why do you think people, black folks, do not take action? Once they've given all this information, why do you think they don't take action?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I really knew. I think it's a bigger sociology conversation. But in my experience, sometimes it's like you just fear the unknown. One thing that I've noticed, especially in black communities, is that unfortunately we typically have this idea of like, I want to become rich overnight. I want to, become a millionaire as quick as possible. And a lot of people have been scammed that way. They've been taken advantage of by so many, gurus and fake scams and all these crazy programs. And so it's odd that when a professional, folks like you and I who actually have licenses and experience, and we're working in this very highly regulated industry where we give factual information, we teach concepts that have proven, generation over generation from the beginnings of this country. And to me, it's always odd that folks will question it. They'll tell me, you know what? Well, let me think about that. Let me see how I can actually, do this, because I think it's a couple of things. First of all, a lot of us do come from a poor background, which means we have a poor mindset. And when you come literally from nothing, you're literally starting from zero, ground zero. Most people want the quickest way to build riches, and they don't understand there is no quick way. It takes time. Like these people who became millionaires and billionaires and who have generation in their families, it started decades ago, over 100 years ago. And so it's just interesting. Sometimes it could be information overload. It could be a matter of analysis paralysis. We sometimes say, like, oh my God, it's too much information, and you just get paralyzed and you don't do anything. Um, I see a lot of Black families who tend to ignore the big elephant in the room, which is the financial disaster that they live in. And then on the other end, I also see people who are just used to being poor. I've seen single mothers. I'm a single mother myself. We become so thrifty in making $1 and turning it into a lifestyle to take care of our families. We sometimes stay stuck in that. We're like, no, this is the way I've always done it. Yes, it's been a struggle. Yes, it's been paycheck to paycheck, but I've made it work. So why do something different? So there could be a lot of underlying reasons. I think a lot of families, when you don't grow up in money, you never talk about it, so
Hmm.
you don't know that you could actually be actually doing yourself a disservice by not taking implementing that knowledge that we teach, because we know applied knowledge is power, not just knowledge. Applying that knowledge is power. So yeah, I mean, those are just a couple things that I've seen in my experience. It's a very unusual phenomenon though, because on the other hand, other communities, our white community counterparts, our Asian community counterparts, our Indian, talking about Indians from India, those type of Asians, they don't think twice. They just take action. They say, okay, great, now I know better, and boom, they do it right away. But for our Black and even indigenous communities that I've worked through, they don't. It's very, I don't know if it's a cultural difference, but it's definitely, you can definitely notice it for sure between our different communities.
And one thing I really like about the community that we're a part of, like one of the things that is really, I don't want to say preached, but is suggested quite often is, when you start in this campaign, you have to look at your own situation first,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to apply as well. And so, even though I don't think, I can't speak for you, but I know I'm not where I want to be financially.
Yep.
However, I know where my blind spots are,
Mm-hmm.
I know where my holes are, and I know my timeline to not fix, but put things into place where they belong.
Right.
And so when you learn this information, you can put together a plan for yourself of, okay, this is where I am. Now, how do I get to that next step? And like one of the things we use is the 7 money milestones. And so every day I'm thinking about, okay, I know I need to do this. I know I need to do this. And I can put together a timeline so that I can set aside funds to accomplish those things. And I think that's probably the most valuable because you can take small steps once you understand the information. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm definitely not where I want to be, but I'm on my way there. It's a journey. And I think a lot of folks don't understand that it is a journey. There is no overnight, oh, now all of a sudden I'm a millionaire, unless you hit the lottery. And unfortunately, too many folks are banking on that. Um, but yeah, I always like when I teach my workshops, one thing I always tell folks is, you know what? I want to teach you to become wise. I want you to make confident and strategic financial decisions with every single dollar. You can have $500, you can have 500,000. What matters is the decisions that you make with every single dollar that you bring into your household. And so I love using the 7 money milestones because I'll throw out a question out there. I'll say, look, let's say you won $1 million tomorrow. Would you know exactly what to do with that $1 million to maximize it, to pay the least amount in taxes, to grow it as much as possible? And most people, they can't answer that because they have no clue on how to make wise financial decisions, no matter how much money they have. So I think it is a journey. People need to understand it. You take baby steps. And I love how you said, where your gaps are, where your blind spots are. A lot of people are completely clueless to those. And even when we point them out, they're just like, oh, that won't affect me. I'll think about it later. And it's not until usually some type of devastation, some type of tragedy happens where people would be like, oh crap, I really need to get my finances in order.
Absolutely. So I want to dive into a couple of these slides now and really focus on some of these questions. But first and foremost, like we tell people all the time, it's one thing to know, but then you have to take action as well. But when you think about financial literacy, it's the knowledge and understanding that enables you to make sound financial decisions. But then also, how do I now effectively manage those decisions and also my personal finances? So I think when people start to understand those two put together is what will make you financially literate. And so what's really funny, and I never thought about this, this is how it's supposed to happen. Once you are financially literate, financial well-being will follow you because you start to look at things completely different.
Yeah.
Like when you want to go out and spend money, subconsciously you think, do I really need to spend that much? Or is this really a want or a need? Or I said I want to accomplish this goal. How is this spending today going to affect that goal in the very near future? Those things will start going through your mind every single day.
Yep.
So in this survey that they did or study that they did, and this, it again pains me to say this because I think, as a community, we're pretty smart people, right?
Yeah.
But of the questions that were asked, only 38% of Black folks who participated only got 38% of these questions correct. Now, I'm a former educator, in college for 17 years.
Right.
And if my students only averaged 38% on a test, like I have failed as a teacher. Like that is not supposed to happen. So just thinking about 38%, what do you think about the resources that are being provided for us to educate us on a normal standard? Like this is not supposed to happen. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my initial thought is typically Black communities have a different idea of what wealth actually means and what riches actually are. It's more so tied to not realistic, more so tied to material things. Oh, I have this nice car, or I have this type of watch, or I see the women with the Gucci, pins, lapel pins that they always wear, or I don't even know. I'm not even a brand name person. So because of that, because of they think money is more tied to what do I look like, what assets, quote unquote assets I acquire that have some value. They don't understand that financial literacy is actually understanding basic concepts, underlying financial concepts, like the ones we teach, the rule of 72, learning about compounding interest, learning about the time value of money, some of those concepts. It's not about what you have. When I talk to people about being financially literate, I always say it's really about how to make your money work for you and not against you. Like I said, exactly how every dollar you bring in has a job, and you can't be taken advantage of because you have lack of financial knowledge. But also, you can make confident and wise strategic decisions. Overall, when most Black communities, they have the lack of understanding of what it means to be financially stable as well. And it's very strange because in this day and age, for me, there's no excuses. Like you can become enrolled in Google University and learn so much online. There's really, you can't avoid to say, oh, I can't find the information. It's out there. We teach the stuff for free on end, day after day. But I think just Black communities, because they think of wealth is, how you look, material things that you have. They don't understand it's really about how to effectively use your financial resources, how to build financial stability, which is having a conversation about an emergency fund, having a conversation about life insurance. Like those things are the foundations of having a financial stability. And so it's a sad statistic, but I'm honestly not surprised that we deal with this in our Black communities.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that the information is everywhere because I don't think that it's kind of like, we tell people not to put all your eggs in one basket when you're trying to establish your financial foundation. But you don't want to just learn from one resource. Like,
Yeah.
We can give you information, but don't just rely on us. And so even myself, I watch several shows on YouTube. One is called Market Mondays, because I'm, eventually going to get another license. And so some of that information is like a foreign language. So I'm reaching out to other resources, right? I mean, reading books, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Um, what else? The Millionaire Next Door. Like
Mm-hmm.
those resources are there to open your eyes and help you understand what's going on. And so we have to do better. And I think that, with this campaign that we have,
Mm-hmm.
continuing to push forward, I think we will change that percentage. I mean, we kind of have to
Yeah.
because we can't let it stay the same, right? So I'm going to dig a little deeper.
Yeah.
And so this survey, these were the topics. So there were questions about wages and take home pay. And one thing that I find most people don't want to talk about when I'm having appointments or classes, they don't want to talk about budgeting and they don't want to talk about how they spend their money because they feel it's my money, I work for it, I should be able to spend it any way I want to.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. However, if you understand the consequence of some bad habits, but if you could change those habits, right? Uh, Saving factors to maximize accumulations, investment types, borrowing and managing debt, and then the types of insurance and how they work. And I know you've done this class a couple of times, but one thing that didn't shock me was we're going to get to in a second, but of all these questions,
Mm-hmm.
in each area, Black Americans only answered, or they answered less than half of the questions correctly, which goes back to that 38%.
Mm-hmm.
However, if they broke all these down, and you can see we answered the least amount of questions correct as it relates to investing, but we got the most right when it comes to borrowing money. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know if this goes into like the payday loan type of stuff and using credit cards incorrectly. I don't know. But it pains me to see the ones that seem to matter the most are at the bottom, was where we're the worst at.
Right.
So investing, uh, understanding risk. So if we have a credit card and not understand that how that 17 to 20% is going to affect us and how long it will take us to get out of debt versus, putting all our money in the bank and not getting paid adequate interest on it, right? So those type of effects. So when you look at this, what do you think you would say to someone or in some of your classes, like, how can we change this?
Well, the number one question that I'll typically ask folks, because we see the same things over and over. Like when you meet enough families, they're typically doing the same thing. Number one, they're probably putting money in the bank, and that's for their savings, their emergency fund. They might even be starting some accounts under their children's names, and that's a great thing. They're intentional. They're trying their best, right? We also see folks who take on loans and mortgages, maybe student loans, mortgages. Some, unfortunately, a lot of the Black community, they do come under predatory services, the payday lending. We do see that. And then very few times, most people do thankfully have a job at some type of corporation that offers retirement accounts. And very most times, it's 50-50. Most people are trying to contribute to that, even though they have no understanding of how that works, how 401k works and whatever. And so when we typically see that basic, it repeats. We see this kind of financial habits with most families. My number one question is always, how has that worked out for you? Is what you've been doing actually been getting you to closer to your financial goals based on the plan that you have in place, which is probably doing one of those four things. And the number one response is no. I'm nowhere near what I would like to have financially. I think I should have more, or I want to do more. And and so I think that just kind of gives them understanding that maybe you don't know what you don't know, and maybe you could do something a little different, which is why I'm glad you're taking this class, because I have never had a class where somebody knew everything that I talked about. Never,
Right, right,
ever, never, ever had it. And so I think it's a point of reference for them to say, you know what? No, what I'm doing isn't actually working. It's not, maybe not necessarily hindering me, but it's definitely not progressing me forward either. So those are my initial thoughts, especially with the borrowing. Again, I have a story. One of my older clients, this woman goes on vacation. Literally, it seems like every 3 months on Facebook. She's on a cruise. She's at an island somewhere. And I've met with her. I know how much money she makes. And she doesn't make, in my opinion, I'm like, I can't even travel that much. How can she afford this? And then when I really had a conversation, she was like, oh, well, when I know that I have a cruise coming up, I'll just go to a payday loan and I'll get a quick $2,000 so I can pay for it. And I'm like, but you know, you're going to be paying like 300% interest. Oh yeah, it's okay. You know, I have it set up to come out of my account. And I'm like, how do you financially justify this decision?
Right.
She knows the ramifications of borrowing that money. She's not, she's not dumbfounded on that part. She totally understands the interest and she's paying it back. But in her mind, she feels like, well, I'm treating myself. I deserve this. This is something that, even though I can't pay for it with cash right now, it's okay for me to go and borrow. And I just see that in a lot of our, minority communities, we think that way. I don't know, maybe Michael, have you seen this where families say, I work so hard, I work nonstop, I'm doing what I can, I deserve to
Mm-hmm.
take this vacation, I deserve to buy this, high expensive brand name luxury item. Do you see that too when you're meeting with people?
I do, and it's that dopamine rush. It's that
Yeah.
short term. It makes me feel good right now,
Mm-hmm.
but psychologically, I know 6 months down the road
Yeah.
that I made a bad decision, and I get that all the time. But again, like we can't. Like one thing I was always taught when I worked for a nonprofit is,
Mm-hmm.
when you look at people's financial information when it's written out on paper, you have to be impartial. You can't tell them
Right.
how to spend their money. And so all I can do, and what I, like you say, you ask them, is that working for you?
Mm-hmm.
In their mind, they think it's working right now because it makes them feel good. But
Yeah.
in the long term, how is it going to affect you? And so I get that all the time. And like you say, it's, once you've figured out how to deal with it, you're okay because you know the outcome. I've been doing it for so long and I'm okay. I've
Mm-hmm.
learned to deal with it. I've accepted it.
Right.
And I think a lot of it is those who that, because 80% of the population works paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think those individuals are just used to the way things have been and the way things are today.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily, they're afraid of what's on the other side, of what could be.
Yeah.
My parents didn't teach me this, so I'm not concerned with it. So, and they did okay, whatever. And so I'm doing okay. But they don't think about, man, I could be doing so much better for myself in 5, 10 years. But then also, if I build those habits, I can now teach my kids these great habits too.
Yeah.
And they could have a much better life than what I had. And I think that's, not to say that it's selfish, but in a sense it is, because there is some sacrifice involved as well.
Yeah.
And I don't, go ahead.
I was just gonna say absolutely. When you were talking, I was thinking of two things. Yes, we kind of get stuck in this just making it life. I'm just making it. I'm just paying my bills, and I'm okay with that. Some folks are okay with not getting to a more. But I always ask them, is that what you want your children to learn? Because that's your children will absolutely mimic your financial habits and your financial decisions. And we learn everything in life from our environment. So if you want your children to live a just making it life, then keep doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. And so kind of on the flip side, we've talked about questions that, the Black communities got wrong in this particular survey, if you will. But if we look at answered correctly,
Mm-hmm.
and so this is broken down, and if you look at this, men answered more correct than women.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know for you, this has got to change as well. And we've got a couple, presentations that do address that as well. But I think typically, at least in my experience, when I sit down with a couple, it's typically the husband who I talk to first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just because they feel that, well, my wife, um, she's taking care of the kids, or, they kind of brush that off like, well, she needs to be at the table too.
Yeah.
So even just thinking about the fact of being a single mom, and, next month is Women's History Month. What's your thought on just the fact that enough women don't get the information, or it's not made available to them, if you will?
Yeah, I teach a workshop called Women in Money all the time. It's one of my favorite workshops that I talk about. And in my class, I really just have a conversation like whether you're single or even married, women need to be at the table when we're having these financial conversations. And when I initially started my career over 15 years ago, I used to meet with husband and wives, and you're right. It was absolutely interesting to me how the wife would even be in the room, to be myself and my partners, and she'll just be kind of sitting in the corner, just quiet, letting the man do all the talking. And I would do my best to engage her, like, hey, I get it. I'm divorced. I used to be married, and I 100% believe in, traditional roles and the male leading the household. But as the woman, you have to understand these things. You have to be a part of the conversation. Yes, the male might make the decisions. He might even be the breadwinner. So that's why the females kind of, step back a little bit. But as a woman, to support your husband or even just to support your family, you need to be educated as well. It's okay that he's the primary person, getting everything initiated, but the woman, you can't be clueless about it, because we have so many statistics about women who do get divorced, and they're like, I don't even know what finances we had. I don't even know how to live on my own and how to take
Mhm.
care of things moving forward. And then women, we typically live longer than men. Statistically, we will live about 7 or 8 years. So
You had to bring that up, didn't you?
we do. We just live a long life. Well, married men typically live longer than single men. Um, but that means that women, we need more money to live a longer life and to take care of ourselves. And if you're an older, even single woman, who's a widow now or widower, I don't know which one is close to which. Um, you need to now take care of yourself alone. You no longer have your husband here. I remember having a conversation. I'll never forget this. When I was meeting with a 70-year-old widow. Her husband passed, and she was like, "I never knew how hard my life would be without my husband. Now I have to pay somebody to cut the grass. I have to pay someone to help me maintain the household because she's just older and she can't do it alone." And it's women just have a very unique perspective. And the interesting part is that statistically, women still manage 95% of the household finances. We're the ones paying the bills. We're the ones who's really doing all the budgeting and making sure every fee is paid for the kids. And so women don't really even know you really are the CFO of the family. You are the chief financial officer, even if the man is bringing in the money. So it's a unique conversation to have with women to understand their place and the personal responsibility that they need to take on when it comes to becoming financially educated.
Absolutely. And when I look at these stats, and this is like a true indication of our campaign, because if you notice, if you
Mhm.
look at the blue stats, relates to age, and it's the older you are, typically the more you know.
Mhm.
And usually that, in my mind, comes from experience. Like when you're younger, you make a lot of mistakes.
Yep.
And so as you get older, you learn what not to do. So of course, in this situation, you get more questions right. But
Yep.
even with in the yellow retired, because now you've been through things, you're probably at a job where you had a pension or 401k, and maybe they taught you some things. So I think in our mind, if we can switch some of these things, if we could teach you while you're younger, if we can teach you while maybe you don't make that much money, but
Mhm.
you start to build those habits, so when you start to make more money, you know what to do with that money.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
and I think so if we could switch these, or at least even them out a little bit more, this would be a major accomplishment for our campaign. So we'll move on a little bit more. And if you notice here with education, the more education you have, typically, the more you're going to know about financial education. I think that's really what we talk about as well. But
Mhm.
the sad thing is, we know that this is really not taught in school as a priority like it should be.
Right.
And it's only required or by the state to have a personal finance course in order to graduate high school. Only 21 schools out of 50 states, or 21 states out of 50, require it.
Yep.
That's an issue. And so one of our initiatives is Teach It Forward, where we're donating books to schools on every level to give them the resource to teach their young people how money works as well.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be closing up a little bit, but I want to get to a couple of slides that I think are very important. So this one says Black American adults tend to experience a lower financial well-being than other American adults. I think that's what we've been talking about, just because of that gap,
Right.
right? This is the good stuff.
Yeah.
So we talked about our book. So in the book, there are 8 characters, and they're actually talking to each other about how money works and what they don't know. And just the fact that, man, had I known this information earlier in my life, where I could be today. So that's the book.
Hmm.
When we talked about financial literacy and financial well-being, that's like, hand in hand. You
Yeah.
need both. One will lead to the other. Um, Savings for retirement. We'll go over that one. But really, what I want to talk about is how do we improve financial literacy? And so this was really shocking to me because it talked about the median income among Black Americans in 2019 was $35,040, $400.
Hmm.
But the actual net worth was only $17,600. And I think one of those things is like home ownership, or when we talk about life insurance that has cash value because you built up, you know, this asset over time, or investing. And
Hmm.
then it said 19% had a zero or negative net worth. I don't even think, I don't think a lot of people know how to, even if you ask them what is their net worth, how do you calculate that?
Hmm.
I think that's a major challenge. So I
Yeah.
think these are a lot of things that our campaign and our classes will teach you. Now, did you know that there are 27 million Black Americans who are financially illiterate and need to know how money works?
No, I didn't. When I saw this initial slide, I was like, wow, that's a lot of people
A
who
lot
are
of people.
untouched. It's a lot of work that we have to do. No, I was completely shocked. I think over the time in history, Black Americans are becoming more wealthier. They're getting more resources. We see advances everywhere. But I was so and so I was totally shocked to still see that, wow, a lot of us are still not financially educated.
So we're going to start to close up. What would you say? So our mission is to stamp out financial illiteracy everywhere,
Hmm.
so families can dream again. And I think that's really what it's about. I mean, my son will be 5 in April, and when I look at him, it's like, man, like I want to make sure that I do the right things for him so
Yeah.
that he doesn't have to be concerned with where he's going to go to school, where he's going to live, but even just trying to teach him some very basic financial things,
Hmm.
because he learned his ABCs, he knows how to count, right? I can teach him these same things as he is building that educational foundation as well.
Yeah.
So talk about our our platform. If if you could talk about how do we close this gap, what suggestions would you make for people? And just talk about this slide that's up here right now.
Yeah, I love the How Money Works book. That's my first suggestion. Is just get your hands on a resource that's easy to digest and easy to read and understand. Because even as much information is out there, a lot of misinformation is as well. We know the How Money Works book was written by two authors, Steve Siebold and Tom Matthews, who both have. Steve Siebold has been interviewing millionaires, first generation millionaires for a long time. Tom Matthews has been in the financial industry for over 30 years. They took their power and knowledge together and created this book. And I really like it because in my 16 years of experience, this is the first book that I've seen about personal finance that was the easiest to read. Literally in an hour, you can go through this whole book and read and learn about basic concepts. And it's been featured all over. Like, this isn't just some little book that I wrote or that Michael wrote. It's a for real legit book. It's sold on Amazon as well. We offer it complimentary to, our contacts who want to get a copy of it. And so I always tell folks, like, look, this book is so easy to read that even right now, my 9-year-old is reading it literally from age 80. I'm sorry, from age 8 to 80. And there's no excuse. My kids, like you said, with your son, they see me talk about this book on all my classes, and they're interested, and I love that. Like, when has a child ever been interested in money? It's such a great way to just be a good example of money management to your children. But in addition to the book, take advantage. At the end of the book, there's a 2-page document. There's a How Money Works worksheet that you can complete just to get a good idea of where you stand. I think a lot of folks, they don't even just take, a moment to just itemize, like, okay, these are actually all my credit cards. These are the balances on all of them. These are the loans that I have. This is how much is in my 401k. This is how much I'm contributing to it. This is my life insurance policy. Maybe, you if you have one, there might have been some cash accumulation inside of it. So I think it's really good to just use that worksheet and just to see, okay, where am I? What do I actually even have? Just to take that, just to do that analysis. But we always teach, we're partnered with the national nonprofit, the Harlan Institute. It's where I really got my foundations as an educator. So I encourage folks, join our webinars, join presentations. We host them all the time, put them on YouTube, they're everywhere to learn about these different topics. But then, most importantly, I always tell folks in my classes, don't do this alone. Get some professional guidance. Like, I get it. Your idea of a financial advisor might be, some middle-aged white man in a big office downtown. I get that. That's a very big reality. But a lot of us, we are licensed financial professionals. We do Zoom meetings, and we don't even charge for our services. Like, that's the amazing thing. Like, we don't care if you have $100 to save or $1,000 to save per month. As long as you're serious about your money, we will help you. We'll sit down and look at everything and give you that direction. And obviously, we'll give you recommendations. We'll say, you know what, if you only have $100, do this with 25, put this 50 here, and do this with the, like, we'll literally break down and give you the exact steps and strategies that we know works. You just got to trust us to, implement it. That's the bigger factor as well. So there's so many resources. I love our platform. That's why I've been sticking with this company for the last 8 years. Actually, I'm going on my ninth year now, because no other, in my opinion, very few other companies teach and offer resources the way that we do.
I mean, I don't. That's a mic drop. So I want to thank you for being on the show. And again, How Money Works. I mean, it's been on. So Steve and Tom Matthews have been on more than, I think I want to say now, 200 news or media outlets, and we're talking CNBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, and we want to stamp out financial literacy. So you can join the campaign, you can get the education, but take action in whichever thing you decide to do. Again, work with a financial professional, someone who is licensed and know what they're talking about. But even if you want to get a second opinion, you may have somebody that you're working with, but get a second opinion just so that that person is on track, right?
Yeah.
So we are here. I know, Shantae, you're on social media as well. What's the best way for people to reach out to you if they want to speak with you?
You know what? Right now, LinkedIn is probably the best way folks can reach me. My name, Shantae Moore, has all these designations attached to it. I would just say connect with me on LinkedIn. I share resources there as well. Michael, I love your platform, and I'm slowly building up, like getting on Instagram and building out Facebook. I'm just not there yet, but I'm getting there. But LinkedIn right now is the best place that folks can connect to me.
Okay. And we'll do it together. We are a team. So again, thank you guys for watching. I want to thank Shantae Moore. My name is Michael Rayford. This is Word for Word. And, we're part of the Heartland Institute of Financial Education, How Money Works.